Welcome to this new online format of Talking Galleries. Thanks for joining us in this new series of panels about gallery practices and the art market. We want to understand the consequences of the pandemic in this industry and the digital challenges we're facing today. We expect our panelists to analyze the market's current situation and inspire and help us visualize where we're going in the next month. As a think tank devoted to generating debate and knowledge, last week we had some very interesting sessions in Spanish, and this week we have had a session on digital solutions in the face of COVID-19. We have announced the future of the art fairs with Global Director of Art Basel Fairs, Mark Spiegler, and we have explored the data of the art market with Anders Pettersson of Artartit. All these sessions will be uploaded on our website and will be accessible to everybody in a few days. I would like to thank my team at Talking Galleries, all the panelists that are participating in these sessions, and all the attendees that are joining us on this new format from home or the office. So, moving on to today's program, we have a promising panel with Alain Servais, collector and entrepreneur based in Brussels, in conversation with András Szántó, author and cultural strategy consultant at András Szántó LLC. He's based in New York, and his new book, The Future of the Museum, 28 Dialogues, will be released on November. I hope you all find the session interesting and profitable. András, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, hi everybody in this global platform. It's really a pleasure to talk to my old friend Alain, who I intersect with various art world destinations. He's the kind of guy you run into in Hong Kong and Buenos Aires and Madrid, of course, and Brussels especially. And he's now in Vienna, and I have a certain amount of homesickness because I was born down the road in Budapest. But we're here today to talk about what's going to happen to the art world post-COVID, and particularly what's going to happen to galleries. It so happens that I wrote my doctoral dissertation on art galleries almost 30 years ago as a sociologist. So I've been following their story for a long time. What attracted me to art dealers and galleries was how they sort of lived in two worlds. One foot in the world of art, one foot in the world of money. I found this kind of liminal in-between aspect unique and uniquely interesting. And as I often said since then, the first version of art history is written in galleries, and I still believe that is true. But it's been a heck of a time for mid-sized galleries in particular for a long time. This has been a challenging period. They are absolutely vital to the ecology of the art world, as independent record labels are vital to the world of music, as independent film producers are vital to film, as small publishing houses are vital to publishing, and on and on. These types of intermediaries are essential to the ecosystem. So what we're going to do with Alain today is we're going to hear Alain's sort of 30,000-foot overview. He's gathered a bunch of ideas, which he's going to go over, and he's going to share some images as well. And then we're going to drill down into some of the details of what he's saying. And there'll be time along the way for questions. And we're getting your questions while we speak, so feel free to add them in. But I'll now just get out of the way and welcome Alain to share his thoughts about what's going to happen to these galleries going forward.
Thank you very much, András, for this very kind introduction. Thank you for Talking Galleries and Kunzinger Gallery, who's lending me their Wi-Fi here in Vienna to speak to you. So I will start to make a series of observations and from what I got, and try to get to a practical solution, which is what people need those days. For this, I put together some slides. So we're both gonna disappear at one point from the screen. I will disappear from the screen. Here I disappear and make some comments. Don't worry, the slide will be available to you, so don't waste your time trying to do print screen if you need them. I want to sum it up, the presentation by this drawing, which is humoristic but pretty serious. You've got two galleries that are having the usual white wine and beer and talking about remaking the world in a very happy way, that are not always realizing that we are a very dangerous time with three serious threats. From the left, auction houses and mega galleries. On the right, the online marketplaces like Artsy or Saatchi Art or wherever you can buy art online. I will start with a few elements of typology because I think it's very important that we define what we talk about to avoid confusions. I will not speak about the art which is the most common right now. It's art for money, art as objects very often. So I will rather focus on the art which help to connect people, address their emotion and stories, ignite precious human imagination, and deepen our ability to understand others like ourselves. I want also to make a second note is that, as you see, this is a PowerPoint. So to many of you, it will sound like a McKinsey presentation, like a strategic consulting. And many of the galleries attending or watching this will say, yeah, but I'm not in this for making money or being famous or expand in many ways. I totally recognize this and I admire those people. I use two quotes that I really like. One from Stefania Bortolami, who said, whatever your role is, you are part of this machine that helps make the selection of the art of the day that matters. I think it's a big interest of many galleries I've met is to be part of that discussion. The second is the answer to of Vanessa Carlos when she was asked why she created Condor. She said that she had a frustration with how the art world we were inheriting from a previous generation largely mimicked the neoliberal pyramid structure that we see in the world at large, where mainly cooperation benefits and where oversimplified notions of survival of the fittest circulates. Despite this, we will speak about survival of the fittest because, unfortunately, the question is, in my opinion, how do you preserve art, the one I described earlier, which is about learning more about ourselves and the one that are not ourselves, in the shadow of what I consider the irresistible art market industrialization. I see irresistible because I don't believe in the kind of the revolutionary statement that we will be able to push back money out of the art world like it was 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, if it ever was out of the art world. But my question is, how do we preserve art in the shadow of that irresistible art market industrialization? I could speak about museums, and I will definitely not miss reading András' book of conversation about museums, because museums are in the middle of massive changes and massive questioning. I should speak also about artists, because as a very good article by Gigi Charlesworth in the Art Review, he was saying, okay, we're all talking about preserving the infrastructure of art, whether the galleries, whether the museums, whether the building, whether the press, the media, but where is the money for the artists themselves? And that would be a very important subject as well, but it will not be our subject here. What is important is to remember that industrialization, and I want to precise that industrialization is a conceptual definition of industrialization, because when I mention that word, many people think, oh yeah, it will be machine and a chain, a building chain and so on. This is not what it is about. It is about the process. And in that process, one very important point is that the winner takes it all. It is not specific to the art world. We see that everywhere. I mentioned here the example of the publishing with this article in the New York Times saying bestsellers sells the best because they are the best sellers, unfortunately. But also branding, which is a very important element, is a successful way to develop one's business anywhere, whether it's in clothing or whether it's in food or television or movies. But it involves sharply increasing costs because maintaining a brand costs a lot of money.
Alain, 1 second, Alain.
Yes.
Just so people understand, it may be helpful for you to just say a few words about what other industries you're closely familiar with in terms of the other parts of your life. What other industries have you been watching closely outside of the art world through your activities as a business person?
Yeah. Yes, I'm an investment banker. So in fact, I'm very used to look at all those industries. My job is really to try to anticipate what will happen. And what's happening in the art world, definitely what happened to the luxury industry struck me. I remember how I saw François Pinault and Bernard Arnault in the 1980s, how they started taking what were artisan or workmen. All the luxury brand were workmen. They were doing amazing product, but they didn't know exactly at what price and how to sell them, which allow us to access amazing products and design at price that were very low. And those people understood that by consolidating and applying those recipe of branding, it was possible to make it an industry and an extremely profitable one. So it's one example, and of course there's many, many other industries that I've been observing over the years, which helped me to make those conclusions.
Great.
One important element also in that industrialization, which is something which is waiting a lot on galleries, is the economies of scale. Right now, as a gallerist, you've got to build the same infrastructure, whoever you are, big or small. The problem is how do you spread that cost, and that's a very, very big problem. What I want also to draw my attention is, as you mentioned it, András, earlier, is that it's not that I want to be nice to gallerists or mid-sized galleries, or that I'm particularly fond of them, or that I want to preserve a disappearing breed like I would do with a breed of parrot in the Amazon in any way. But I strongly believe, like you do, and like you mentioned, that galleries, mid-sized galleries, are absolutely essential stakeholders in the art ecosystem, starting from the artists to the museums and the collectors and the public. They have a very important role. I think everybody in the industry is aware of it. The same way as we see in other industries that, or sports, for example, that we see that we need minor leagues clubs to train the young talents of tomorrow and to allow them to emerge, because if we had only prime major league sports, we would not get anywhere. So that's what I will try to develop from here. Of course, we are in the COVID time, so I've been seeing since the end of COVID, I've been visiting probably 150 galleries around Europe, unfortunately, because I cannot go out of Europe anymore. One of the things which struck me is that every single gallerist I met was very happy to leave the hamster wheel in which he felt to be trapped. And I took out this quote. As you see, I was very influenced by Hans-Ulrich Obrist because he's always using quotes. So I said, okay, I use quote myself to look maybe even more intelligent than I am, that I pretend to be anyway. And he said this following: art was being absorbed by this relentless activity of the art world circuits, Miguel Abreu says. It was stripped of its power of expression to reach people, engage people. And the result was that everybody had been forced into the position of shopping and not collecting anymore. It was just one quote among many others. But
it reminds me, Alain, just to jump in, I can't remember where on this hamster wheel we were when Michael Govan, in a conversation, the director of LACMA, said, I've noticed in recent years that people no longer see art, they see prices.
You're totally right. And that's one of my interests as a collector is I don't want money to determine what is the art I'm seeing or I'm exposed to. And that's the challenge. And that's my interest in giving my opinion on the gallery industry. So how the question is, everybody's happy to leave the wheel, but how you make sure not to go back in the wheel if it starts again. And that's extremely important. I think one of the observations that we can make, and everybody made, is that galleries have got a big advantage of art spaces because they are the most flexible space to see art and sell art at a time when art fairs and museums are restricted. Another word coming back very often is local is the rule of the game. And who knows the local better than local galleries? So there's, at this moment, a very unique, and I'm underlining the unique, opportunity for galleries to regain control of the engine of the hamster wheel that I described earlier, the art fairs. What do I mean by regaining control? If you remember, art fairs were created by a bunch of gallerists in the 70s that didn't know how to bring attention to them and to sell a little bit more art. Then it went into corporate hands most of the time. And then the galleries were kind of clients of the art fair. Right now, everybody agrees that tomorrow will be a different world. And when the art fair was a kind of passage obligé, a compulsory passage for any galleries to be recognized, now the galleries are the ones that are making any art fair possible. So they have a new unique possibility to give their opinion about how the art fair is run. Whether it's the VIP program, the selection process, the themes, the sections, many different aspects, even the cost of it. How many are you ready to pay for it? Of course, individually, galleries have no voice. If gallery XYZ says something to a fair, you have no choice. So, but the opportunity is to work together and to regain control. It has been done a few times. You remember, András, the few letters that were signed by 40 gallerists around Art Basel Hong Kong and Art Basel Basel, giving their opinion about the way things are. And you noticed how the tone of even the most powerful of the art fairs was changing, that they became much more listening to their clients rather than imposing their views from the top. And I think that's very important.
And by the way, it's something we're seeing in many industries. I think that the mutual awareness that everybody's interdependent is something you'll see from airlines to art fairs to name your industry. I'm sure the other industries you see, you're seeing this kind of change.
You're totally right. So again, it's that's why I'm talking today, is that I think it appears in other industries. But so galleries have got an opportunity. They have also a kind of an alternative. I was listening to Mark Spiegler yesterday. Georgina asked him at one point, do you think that gallery weekend can be an alternative to art fairs? And he said, I don't think so, but I agree with that. But I strongly believe in the concept of what I called Gallery Weekend Plus. What do mean Gallery Weekend Plus mean? I was in the Gallery Weekend in Berlin. There was 35, 40 excellent shows in the galleries. But it was easy for the local galleries to say, okay, but this is my city. I can go and visit whenever I want. And of course, a gallery weekend, there are many of them around. There's no really incentive for foreigners to visit the city, even if it was a great opportunity. My idea is that besides the 40 galleries, the gallery weekend itself, the city, would invite 10, 15, 20 galleries, but not to share spaces, because it's the same as sleeping on the couch of a friend. You don't have much flexibility in doing anything. But you would identify spaces that would be available for different reasons for a little time. You know, it happened in Paris for the Fashion Week. It happened in Brussels for Brunaf, where spaces are made available for visitors, for out-of-town visitors for a fee, and to develop. And the fee would be spread out on every member. And the advantage of this process is that it would make the gallery weekend more attractive for the local collectors, because they would visit their usual gallery, but also around the corner, they would have very good gallery from abroad, very recognized gallery. But it will also bring the city to more attention to that gallery weekends. So it's a win-win for every party, because there are many galleries which are coming from centers where collecting is less developed. I'm speaking about Central Europe, part of Latin America, part of Southeast Asia. There are many galleries in Thailand or Colombia or Bulgaria that needs the exposure to the larger collecting center. So it would be the opportunity to make it a win-win for everyone. Also, it would, to be honest, give a stronger negotiating position for the galleries to negotiate with the fairs, because I don't believe in the suppression and the disappearing of the fairs, not at all. I think that they have a very fair role to play for a certain type of collectors that have less time or that are enjoying to be seen, buying, or to create the events, because the art fair for me in the large ecosystem of art is a little bit like an auction. It's you buy now or never. And it creates a kind of incentive to trigger the acquisition. So I don't want the disappearance of the art fairs, but I want them to be more at the service of the community than the reverse, which was the case before. Unfortunately, as one comment by Marianne Buski recently in a Bloomberg article, she's saying, everyone is doing their own thing. That's the bottom line. There's no consensus. And again, that's the challenge that I'm giving to the gallery system. Organize or disappear. And I come back to my caricature at the opening of this talk and the way it was shown. In general, other elements that I would like to draw attention in the COVID environment is that notion of K-shaped recovery. Everybody was hoping for a V-shaped recovery when we would go back to things as they were before, or a U-shaped, it would take a little bit more time, but we are unfortunately in a K-shaped recovery, meaning that some sectors are very well supported and some others are not at all. But also the very clear situation is that the inequalities that was already reigning and very, very strong before the crisis will only be worse after, which draw our attention again to the importance of maintaining the ecosystem and also the weaker part of it, and not only let the strongest run. Everybody must find a way, and maybe the art world, which is still a microcosm from larger society, can behave in a different way from that point of view. What is the threat? The threat, I don't have to say it, I said it in that drawing: auction houses, mega galleries, and online marketplaces. This is a few examples of what's going on. I was noticing in the latest news, Artsy and Phillips present Endless Summer, our co-curated online-only sale of contemporary works for easy collecting. You see that they are in different sides of the spectrum, but they are working with each other. And Artsy is supposed to be working for the industry, but I'm always a little bit careful with this after the example of Amazon. Again, András, it's my way of looking laterally. Amazon put itself to the service of the industry by saying to third-party vendors, I'm happy that you sell your products on my platform, and I will arrange the distribution and the transport and everything. But except that it appeared after a few years that Amazon was taking advantage of the statistics they were getting for demands to develop their own product, which was a competition with their third party.
Yes, but just to play a little devil's advocate, of course, you can't say that without mentioning that, as was true for Google and the publishing industry and the news, that the legacy industries could have invented Amazon. The legacy industries could have bought, the New York Times could have bought 5% of Google, and then nobody would be worried. So we have to acknowledge the lack of innovation that has created the room for enterprising upstarts to take command of so much market share.
You're totally right again, András. And again, it's only for me to underline what my conclusion will be, and which is pretty radical conclusion. But either you organize yourself as a kind of lobby group of a professional association, something strong that will be able to orientate or guide the development of those mega system, or you're risking to go the same way as the small publishing house or the small independent movies. You're going to be like in a zoo when a few cognoscenti will support you, but you will be only always on the edge.
And before you go on, just because we have our first very nice question from the so-called audience regarding Artsy. So how should people approach Artsy when many of their clients see these platforms as a validation of being a gallery? Now, how do you change the terms, make it work for both sides?
The same way as I mentioned it for the art fairs. It's about making the art fair work for you than working for the art fair. So it's pretty easy to let yourself go into the numerous services that a platform like Artsy, but others platform as well. In terms of services, I'm going to take care of your online marketing. I'm going to take care of your data. I'm going to take care of your transport. I'm going to take care of many different things. But then you have to have the vision to understand that you need to keep key competences in-house. Because if you give them away, then you are giving yourself hands and feet tied to this provider, which will not become a provider anymore, but could become your master. So that's my answer to this question. About the auction house. The auction house, Sotheby's overall volume of private sales transaction has actually increased by approximately 10% during the confinements between January and August, reaching 575 million. So they're not going down, they're going up, and they still have a massive problem of fixed costs. So they will slim down, but they will become extremely dangerous potentially for the system. Another example is Sotheby's reported an increase of 30% in new bidders and buyers across all sales categories so far this year, saying that 30% of all bidders are now under 40. It is very important because I bought my first work at auction maybe 13 years into collecting. What I see as a development is I see many young collectors starting to collect online at auction. And that's very dangerous because if the galleries give up their education role and the ability to get the new clients, they will give an enormous power to their direct competitors, and it will be extremely dangerous for them. So my conclusion of it is to remind galleries that they have to play an active role in the education of the next generation of art buyers and maybe collectors. And as you know, András, there's still that syndrome of getting into a gallery and nobody's raising their nose from whatever they're doing. And I really appreciate some galleries that I listen to. In Barcelona, for example, Carlos Senda mentioned to me, we changed our procedures, and now as soon as someone gets into the gallery, someone from the team will have to stand up and go and offer to do a tour of the exhibition. Not asking, not waiting to be asked, but going spontaneously. And he said the reward of it was very high. So
I think just to say, I think we've actually made great strides in this direction. I honestly believe that it's less scary to walk into a gallery today. There's also greater transparency. And interestingly enough, I do think, for example, in some ways, getting prices posted at art fairs has had a very positive effect as well, where they're possible. So bit by bit, the industry has been moving in that direction. But now, of course, there's even greater incentive to lower those barriers to entry.
The tradition was to move incrementally. You will not disagree with me, András, that the gallery system is extremely conservative. As soon as you propose a new initiative, everyone is looking at what their neighbor will be doing before moving. He will ask his friends and things, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And before moving. The question is incremental today is not possible anymore because The people that are sweeping the money are moving fast. Auction houses are moving very fast online. The mega galleries are moving very fast because they had online services already there, but also they have publishing arms, which allows them to create the context themselves. And so they have massive advantages.
This is the moment to recognize, we all know the term disruptive innovation by Clayton Christensen. That's a term that's entered the lexicon, but fewer people know the other term from his book where he wrote about business innovation, which is called sustaining innovation. The little polishing of the diamond, every year a little better, but not categorically different. I think you could make the case that the galleries have been engaged in this kind of sustaining innovation, incremental improvements, while other people are, eating their lunch.
This time I'm disagreeing with you because I think changes has always imposed themselves on them. They never let change. Why? Because they are scattered. They never speak with one voice. So they wait that the herds, because we're talking about herd immunity, they're waiting that the herd moves in one direction, but it's always very scary for the one that will do the first move by themselves. So I intend not to agree with you as an industry from that point of view.
Let's come back.
I will finish on the mega galleries because I want to go to the positive sides. There was that news of Gladstone Gallery welcomes Gavin Brown as a partner when Gavin Brown was a kind of a hero as a mid-sized gallery for all of us. You see that the mega galleries manage, despite the competition that they're supposed to be working under. Pace, Aquavella, and Gagosian have teamed up to form a new independent company, which will actively pitch for estates against Christie's and Sotheby's. They make radical move. Where are the radical moves of the mid-sized galleries? Yeah. Sotheby's is opening a luxury shop, and eventually the last one, Hauser & Wirth, and you were the one sending me the news, András. Hauser & Wirth hires UK department store heads as first global CEO. So you've got a CEO of Hauser & Wirth, which is actually a guy coming from luxury industry.
Fortnum Mason, yeah.
Yeah. So you see where they are going, and I think it's important to do radical things. So I'm not saying again that nothing is moving, and I want to draw attention to developments and innovation and collaboration. I really appreciate it in the context I just described in the industry, in the mid-sized gallery. First of all, the solidarity that the mega galleries shown, because I don't see mega galleries are as competitors of mid-sized galleries. I think mega galleries are totally aware of the necessity and the role of mid-sized galleries. So as far as I've seen, they were quite often supporting the development of mega when something was coming from the mid-sized level. Example, David Rayner online and Perrotin as well. Tadeusz Ropak opening their spaces or their websites to small and mid-sized galleries. Probably the most interesting initiative that I've seen, and the one that should be a model for many others around, is Gagosian and Jeffrey Deitch, kind of superstar of the high-end markets, have joined dozens of smaller LA galleries to launch a shared online sales. 12 member galleries each week, archiving of exhibition, plus collectors' home visits, plus interviews. They really understood everything that was needed. They also understood that the success of online business is to be focused. So not everyone member of association is on the platform at the same time, because we get otherwise to the OVR of thousands of work that nobody wants to browse through. The mega galleries understood the idea. The best example where Gagosian or many others are in the focus. They're focusing on one artist, one work for 3 days, and so on. So they understood that you must create some kind of tension in it. And that's the best example that I've seen. The 60 dealers taking part in the initiative will also form a professional association to promote Los Angeles' blossoming art scene. This is the way forward. Again, an association of 60 with a strong will and some leaders of vision. And in Los Angeles, this visionary is Jeffrey Deitch, who showed through his entire career with sometimes controversial moves, but has been always, without any doubt, an innovator. Other innovation, the controversial Messe in St. Agnes by Johann König, that was very successful in drawing attention and bringing people back to the galleries. Another amazing, and that's the only one I saw doing this, is Basel by Berlin. Again, it was a city initiative of the galleries, of 27 galleries in Berlin. I'm really wondering how many years people would have to work to get 27 galleries in Paris or Brussels or Madrid or New York or London to work together. The Berlin galleries did it, and they had the very great initiative of replicating their booth inside the gallery. And rather than doing OVR, there was the possibility to show the exhibition in real when they were doing virtual tours. But also, psychologically, it's very important for a collector to know that he's got to hurry, because some people will see it in real. And they cannot maybe see it in real, but the fact someone saw it in real creates more pressure in acting fast. So it was a successful initiative, it was a group initiative, and it was very innovative. So collaboration can be not only between galleries, it can be between galleries and collectors. During the gallery weekend, there was another successful initiative, which was K60. There was a collector developer who had a very large space in the outskirts of Berlin, and he talked to 8 young galleries. What was interesting is I spoke to one of those young galleries, and they said, you know, it's very kind of you to offer, but we have really no money to invest in renovating the space and even putting lights. The generosity of the collector was then not only to lend the space for free, but even to equip it. And in order to support the galleries, because I think everybody, again, I repeat, will be happy to help the medium and small size galleries if they show that they're ready to help themselves. You know, we are both from Christian or education, and there's something saying, help yourself and heaven will help you, or something more from JFK saying, don't ask what the state can do for you, ask yourself what you can do for the states. And that is what is still missing in the small and mid-sized galleries. Another interesting initiative, Paris International Art Fair. They cannot do it in real, so they do, okay, let's do an exhibition with pieces from all the different members or the participants. It will be possible to see it in real in Paris. It will be manned by employees of the fair, but it will also be online. So that mix between online and offline is, I think, a very interesting idea. Another small example, that there are many other examples like this. NF Galleria in Madrid decided to do an exhibition called Camping, where artists were allowed to bring works in the exhibition and interact, and not knowing exactly where the exhibition will go, but how it is going. I'll go briefly about online viewing rooms, because I want to get to the ends. I don't do any online viewing rooms. I'm not an exception. I hear many of my fellow collectors, and I've been honestly asking the question to at least 60 galleries I met. I specifically asked them, how did OVR go for you? And they said, it doesn't work for us. So why? First of all, the technology is totally deficient. It's a technology from 30 years ago. I'm not used of seeing Art Basel coming out with such a low quality technology or product, to tell you the truth. They're trying to improve, but the alternative exists.
In fairness, we should say that many dealers have done very well on OVR. So I think there's a wide range of successes, but I think it's fair to say that not everybody has been fully disappointed. But clearly an early stage technology with lots of room to grow. But,
you know, András, you say that, but I'm saying it from anecdotal things and quotes. You know, in this page you see quoting Johann König, which is not a minor gallerist. He said, Art Basel OVR, unfortunately, although we put a lot of effort into it and recorded films from each artwork, did not convert as expected. And David Zwirner on the same page, you do much better with artists where the audience is already strong. It's hard to introduce brand new works that people aren't familiar with. because you have a limit on how interest in the work can spread at this moment. So yes, you're looking at the report of Claire McAndrew about this, but
no, not just Claire McAndrew. I mean, like you, I talked to a lot of people, but I think this is, by the way, a universal feeling. I think in this Zoom life that existing relationships are easier to maintain in these channels, like our friendship now. We're creating new relationships, new customers, introducing new products is extremely hard, broadly speaking. But clearly the criticisms have been there. I just want to note that even my personal conversations, I've run into some dealers who say they've done pretty well. Maybe it's because they're dealing with existing clients, not just based on Claire's report. But anyway, carry on.
You are based in the States as well, where the art market is much more commodified already. So yes, definitely the mega dealers. But I mean, if David Zwirner says it, Dominic Levy said it as well in an interview that you saw, András. So I'm sorry, I still have to meet the guys who are doing well, despite whatever is said. So I will finish now by this last view of the future, and then I will quote I hope I can call him my friend, but I'm definitely admiring what Tim Schneider is doing. And a few years ago, he wrote this article from which I will just quote as a final comment. The quote is, Major League Baseball used collective bargaining to go from chaos and scandal to fortune and functionality. Why can't galleries? That's my question. I will go further. Large groups, how would it work? Large group empower a few trustworthy representatives to negotiate on their behalf in pursuit of terms that everyone in the collective can live with. The problem of the gallery system is that it's all a lot of individualist and ego. That's one of the reasons why they get involved in arts. And the big problem is to give up the details that you want to care for the interest of the group. It's evolving a little bit in the younger galleries, but there's still a lot of people in charge that are still not ready to give up their right to give their opinion. A mega gallerist could craft the most, even a mega gallerist could craft the most brilliant, elegant fix to the system imaginable. But this magical solution would evaporate into the ether if it were simply proposed from the stage of a conference, like I'm doing now, and casually discussed in the aisles of the next art fair. It needs to be put in practice in the group. It's either ignorance or disingenuous to act as if implementing a limited set of mutually beneficial, common sense regulation is the same as turning the gallery sector into a soulless, mechanized dictatorship. Because that's why I hear when I'm evoking this, I said, no, but it will look like a company business and so on. No, it's not. It's not. It works in sport, it works in many sectors, and it's just for the good of the whole system, particularly the weak. I like to remind sometime when I remember I was speaking about contract between galleries and artists at Talking Galleries in Barcelona, and I remember someone asked me from the audience, but I'm sorry, you don't understand what the relationship between an artist and a galleries are. It's a family relationship. It's an emotional relationship. I just returned the question and I asked him, are you married? And he said, yes. Did you sign a contract with your partner? And he said, yes. Why did you have to sign a contract for a love relationship? Simply because you want to preserve and protect the weakest part and avoid the conflict later. So it's the same thing. Last paragraph here. Although we should never forget the impact of a dramatic shift in buyer behavior, galleries have nevertheless reached the present crisis partly by choice. And choice is the only thing that can extricate them from it. That's almost my conclusion. It's now or never. And the last quote about a little bit what's the alternative of not doing anything or keeping going marginally like it happens today. Art sales will continue with or without reform. It's just a matter of whether they will happen in a healthy, sustainable ecosystem, or whether the mega galleries will completely monopolize the trade through brute force acquisition of smaller galleries and the creation of vertically integrated talent pipelines that begin in leading MFA programs and ends in the white cube. So that was my reason to address myself today. It's now or never. The situation will be difficult in the next years, but there's no alternative for the galleries to organize themselves as professional association and rebalance the whole system, taking into account their specific needs. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, András, for your intervention. How do I get rid? I stopped the slide presentation.
No,
and now
here we are. We're finally, it feels like a real thing. I wish we had some nice Viennese strudel and an espresso that we could share. But what we'll do now is for the next, we have about 15, 20 minutes to sort of get a little bit deeper on things. So first of all, I think what you're presenting here is essentially a structural solution to a structural problem. We've had this tremendous splintering of the art world, and I'll come back to this in a second. How do you create some collective bargaining power for these lots of relatively small businesses so that they can act together? And that's a very, very provocative and important question to raise at this moment, as similar questions are posed in other sectors of the economy. Before we go back to this, I just want to acknowledge some of the interesting quotes and comments that have come in. Some of them relate to the fact of how do you, particularly if you're a small gallerist or representative of an artist, particularly younger artists, less known artists, how do you break into this current system as it exists, where even mid-sized galleries are like a whole threshold that you have to jump over? There are several comments related to that. I should mention also that,
András, you realize you're asking me 5 questions already.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, we should start from the beginning because I forgot the first one. You asked. How do you do with? Start again. The first one. What was the first one?
Incoming questions. There was one question about what advice do you have for particularly people who represent almost completely unknown artists, small galleries, even breaking into the current system, particularly with these digital platforms, is very difficult to get noticed. So what are they supposed to do, the ones who are not yet even the big mid-sized galleries?
I will have a pretty controversial answer, but first of all, you've got to find a way to know whether what you're doing is meaningful or not, which is hard because it's the same with an artist. We are faced with a lot of artists that are bringing us, and you and me, we would recognize immediately that maybe what he considers art has got no chance of getting any attention because for whatever reason. So how do you break that first level? Is first of all by testing yourself with your colleagues. I believe in the kind of Rotten Tomatoes system, but also the kind of local scene system where the local scene knows who's doing a good job. I'm always amazed sometimes when I see young galleries that I'm spotting myself that are discovered by Art Basel very quickly. I remember I sat down with Noah Horowitz at a breakfast in Miami, and he asked me, "What do you think about clearing?" And I said, "Noah, believe me, go for clearing." And he was still at the Armory at the time. It's a fantastic gallery. What I mean is, the first thing is to be honest, because maybe you totally thinking that you belong to the art world and what you're presenting is no art. I'm sorry to be blunt. Mm-hmm. But the first hurdle that you need to go is, get the opinion of, if you get traction by the members of your local scene, of some other people, some curators and so on. If you don't manage, it's not because they are not nice or they know nothing or you don't do it well. It's maybe you're doing something which is not the right thing. So, yeah. And okay. I will go back to that first step. Even to start, the first thing, and I'm still recommending to many galleries, I was asked for galleries in the Central Europe. They're asking me, what do I do? I'm in this country, in this city, very far away. I said, the first thing you need to do is to try to hook yourself to a community that exists in the system.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm just going to quickly throw out questions because I want to pull in another question. And I should acknowledge, speaking of Central European galleries, next door in Budapest, ACB Gallery just got on an OVR at Art Basel for the first time yesterday with Imre Bach, an incredible painter. But it relates to one of the questions that came in from the audience. Is sales the only measure of results in the OVR? Is it the closed sales that matter, or do the OVRs deliver in other ways to galleries and their artists?
First of all, you've got to understand what you call OVR, because even in the Clark-McKendrew report, which is one of my worst arts world PV, because the definitions are always, ambiguous. What is OVR? Is it OVR organized by a fair, or is it the online viewing room that you do in your own gallery? Which is a totally different story. Whether that's, many galleries have now developed and invested in their own website and sell from their own website. So people are confusing OVR and OVR from that point of view. So the question you're asking is, of course, no. Like any relationship, it depends. The only thing that I'm saying is that right now, the art fairs OVR were a generous move by the art fairs to give a chance to the galleries to do something.
Yeah.
As Melanie Jurlis said it in the Financial Times recently, OVR is a relatively quick way to pull exhibitors together digitally and to galvanize attention. So it is a worthy effort. But if you do that, do it with the proper technology. I mean, what we call in our industries, and you know this as well, it's because you're working with museum, what you call the user experience was worse than catastrophic. I mean, it was really to make you run away from art.
One of the questions that came in was, are you aware of any emerging platforms that have not yet been deployed, even outside of the sector, that would provide a more satisfying experience? Is there something you can point to?
But it's important to define what you want from it. In one very interesting comment by David Zwirner, again, he said, nothing will replace the fact that from my booth in Miami, I can screen around 50 works of art with one glance of an eye. And you and me, we know it. We know the art fair, we suddenly, for one unknown reason, we stopped to number 48 of that 50 works. And we approach and we discover something we don't know. That's the interesting part.
Yeah.
If you've got to click through the 50 works, I can promise that when you arrive at 20, you don't want to go to 48. The way it was done. And if you need to go back and you go back to the wrong place, oh my God, it was nightmarish. I'm not kidding.
Right.
Even thinking about it again, it was nightmarish. So what you need to replace is, this is what I want this. Some other people, they just want to go to Oscar Murillo and buy a fucking Oscar Murillo. This is not what I want. I want to have the experience of discovering. Yeah. The second experience is interacting with the gallerist, okay? Those are the two key experiences. Maybe the third is to interact with other members of the public and our friends in the art system. Those are the three main things of an art fair, in my opinion. So one system which allows it, for me, which was very promising very early on, is what Artland has been doing for Untitled. It's a 3D. Of course, it's important that you're able to click on the work to see it in full magnitude if you want to see it and to move back out. So it's still not perfect. But that notion of walking in the aisles, which I experimented in Untitled, you can walk around the fair in 20 minutes, really walking actually through the fair. And of course, the next step now, there will be, it will be developed in the OVR of Art Basel now. There will be a chat thing where you are able to work. But already some galleries said, oh, sorry, no, I'm sleeping at night. Or I'm closing at 7. But I'm sorry, man. I mean, if you're living in the 21st century, you must find a way. there may be someone in China that you're working with that can take over when they are there.
Maybe an AI bot can do it for you. Okay, so now I want to go back to our main topic because we have limited time and I really want to drill down on a couple of things. Let's go down to your core thesis, which is really about this collective bargaining scenario. And you already mentioned Marian Botsky saying, well, we're sort of each out on our own. Somebody else who said, well, we sort of bought the situation to ourselves. So the situation is that the gallery system has grown through a kind of metastasis, right? So you've had, as the art market grew, you got more and more galleries, roughly with 24 artists, with a certain number of clients. And then what happened is as growth happened, the associate director goes off, creates another gallery. And then the associate director of that creates another gallery. So you went from a situation, I live in New York City, you used to have 2-3 dozen galleries that sort of structured the situation. Now you have 500. That created this kind of monster. So the question is, and in many ways, it's a beautiful monster because it's wonderful to walk into these very lovely individual galleries. But how do you actually go about unscrambling this omelet? How, do you really have a hope? What is the way from here to there? There's a lot of logic in what you're saying, that it would be very nice to have representatives, but so far gallery associations have proven to be rather weak, although ADAA does a very nice show here in New York. How do you envisage these very individualistic entities actually mustering the ability to come together in some groupings of that kind?
I will tease you a little bit, András. You've been living in the States too long, my friends. Go back to Europe. I'll give you 2 examples. First of all, the French Gallery Association, Professional Association of Gallery, is without any doubt the best structured professional association anywhere in the world. They go as far as doing things that you would consider, András, as being communist, meaning that every gallerist is giving their turnover to the system, and they even pay a fee based on the percentage on their turnover. To be honest, me as a Belgian, I asked them, does anyone give the true figure? Because for me, it looks like so radical that it was something very weird. So one example is this one. Another example which goes across different countries is NADA. Mm-hmm. NADA was a fair, as you know, NADA restructured itself as a professional association at the service of their members. Doesn't mean that it's still perfectly, doesn't mean that it's powerful enough, but it's an example. For many, many years, Carlos Duran, Emilio, and Lucia know that I was counting on Talking Galleries evolving from a simple think tank as someone leading the way by developing some standards and some standard behavior and some standard rules and standards, behavior, best practices that would be kind of becoming a standards. The same way as you know it as well, András, you know that one of the big surprises in the last few years is when Art Basel came out with those rules about the best behavior. Art Basel, like NADA, like others, they are understanding that if they don't clean up the mess, the Knödler mess, the Bafau mess.
You need transparency. I mean, there's no way you're going to have real collaboration without transparency. Okay, let me just keep throwing a few questions at you because of our...
But am I answering your question? You understand why I'm leading?
I all noted, and people are responding also in the system. So somebody's things registering. What about this sort of back end? I mean, let's talk about real practical things. I mean, Cromwell Place just announced in London as a kind as this kind of cohabitation, which is maybe makes it possible to not set up a full gallery, share back end resources, share overhead, have a satellite in London without building a whole separate operation. Do you see that being a new model that will expand?
The Cromwell example is the example of someone identifying a right problem and a right solution to the system, but trying to make or building a business plan which is way too expensive. I mean, I was talking to a gallerist in the direction of Whitechapel in London, and he compared the price of 1 month in Cromwell with 1 month where they are. I mean, it's like 1 year of rent. And it's way too expensive. So it will be a luxury goods industry thing. It will apply to some galleries which have that profile, a little bit like certainly Lehman Mopin. When you see the list of the galleries and the other institutions that are there, I mean, it's not really the most dynamic, I'm sorry to say, and that's my personal opinion.
Well, yeah,
so
I mean,
I think the idea is good, and collaboration is necessary. The thing is, it must be done taking into account what you want to achieve and putting it where it's done in the most expensive city, one of the most expensive cities in the world. Because what the COVID crisis will be, I think, will be very dangerous for London and New York. Because rent are insanely expensive. They were kind of crossing places where everybody was going through 1 second. So they were very well positioned for it. But it changed completely because maybe we will not go across and they cannot bear that kind of rates anymore. So doing Cromwell in London was unfortunate from that point of view. So London and New York will also be particularly vulnerable in the circumstances.
I mean, what we're seeing in the rest of the co-working economy is we're now seeing a whole hierarchy of co-working. And I live in Brooklyn now, and many storefronts are being converted or were being converted pre-COVID into just little local co-working facilities. So I think we're going to see a wide spectrum of these entities. Maybe one more question. We have to really go fast. It's all very well to talk about collaboration within the sector, but the real monster in the garden, if you will, is cross-sectoral collaboration. I mean, the ecology at the end of the day is artists, collectors, galleries, press, and of course, institutions. I mean, one of the things I really liked about the Art Basel Buenos Aires program, the Art Basel Cities program, is that it actually brought together the museums, the galleries, the collectors, the artists. Do you think that COVID, the post-COVID situation, and of course there are deep collaborations between galleries and museums as it is, it's just that they're rather intransparent. Do you feel that in this moment of mutual need, there might be more cross-sectoral realignment as well? Or do you see a need for it?
It's a necessity. My question, András, I want some people to print in their brain is, how do I preserve art in the shadow of the art market industrialization? So the same thing with the museum. You know, museums will be in deep problems. As you know, I'm looking forward reading your book from there. And you told me in advance that there were very, very interesting testimonies that were made on this. So you know the challenge in front of which the museums are. But as you know as well, the fact that their budget are so much lower and will not get better in the future mean that they are even more dependent on the support of the galleries or the auction house or the market platform in some way. So there will need to be collaboration in order to preserve the arts by the collaboration between artists, galleries, collectors have got their role to play. It's my responsibility to be part of it. You know, I will not hide from you that the works I bought during the confinement, I bought works specifically from galleries that I know would benefit the most from the influx of money at this time. So I didn't spend my money in mega galleries. I didn't do any investment for the future or make money out of it. I maybe bought insignificant works, maybe for the future or my investment portfolio, which is not in art, but it was the case. The key point, András, and you will agree with me, is transparency. Yeah. You've seen it in the dramatic experience of the Bafao case, how much there are dirty practices in the art world. And there are good things and bad things. The same when a museum get involved with a collector. You know, what wants the collector? Does he want to show his collection, then to sell it, and so on and so on. The key point is transparency. what you do, put it in writing and be able to show it publicly. And that will be the key of that collaboration. And you are right, it must involve everyone who has interest in preserving the art, the one that I described initially, the one that really bring people together, build bridges between people, make yourself questioning yourself. And what I define sometimes is the art that allows you to escape the cave of Plato in some way.
So second to last question, because we just want everybody to know we'll be soon wrapping up. And I've been able to pull in some of the comments that came in online. So
thank you, András.
I feel good about sort of getting to the end. But, some will say, and I enjoyed that, as always over the years, we've agreed on some points, we disagree on others. You tend to be more forceful in how you put things than I would. But I think we would explore a wide range of issues. One of the things I would say is, though, there are those, let's take the long view. And there are those who said, well, how is this different? It's always been the case. There's been an anxiety around the art world for a long time. People in the 60s were worried that it's been blowing up. In the 80s, everybody was anxious that we're getting too commercial. How is this moment different? That's question one. And then as a concluding thought, give me your best and worst case scenarios for how we're going to come out of this.
Mm-hmm. First of all, how is it different this time? The dramatic change of the last 15 years has been the influx of new money in arts. This new money infected all relationship in the system, the kind of art which is shown, because as you said yourself, I don't want money to determine what I will be watching. So the massive difference is money is entering. As you remember, we are old guys from the art world. There was a time when nobody was watching the art world. Yeah. Nobody cared about the art world. So it was the people in there were really passionate, the same way as you have the guys specializing in stamps or whatever, the boxes of Bashkiri and so on. So they were all there not for the money and, out of curiosity in many ways. It changed with the money. And the problem is when the money enters, then the logic becomes overwhelming and can become destructive. And we've seen it in many cultural industries, whether it's the movie industry, which for me is the most dramatic. And in some way, we had a strange way of an outsider like Netflix, which started as a company, you remember that, András, I'm sure, started at only sending DVD by the post, by the mail.
In my post box,
to replace the famous video renting shops that existed before. And now they spend something like $15 billion a year in production of content. So the danger is that we will have a standardized offer. And when I see what we see in the movie industry, in the television, in some way in the literature and the kind of novels that we're seeing everywhere, I want to preserve diversity in the art world. And that's why I think it's more dangerous, is that weight of money could create an uniformization, which would be extremely destructive.
So that's
I remember one sentence from Hans-Ulrich Obrist, which I really have graved on my brain, is art is the only way to escape death by standardization. It was something like this, and I like that. So the worst case is the same, is to get to that point. I don't want to become a robot. I want to still control and see what I see, to have the diversity of the offering and the quality. The same way as I try to do it with independent movies and festival in the States. I forgot that festival of Robert Redford is doing all those elements where we can get diversity. And my scare would be that we would not access it anymore because it would not be at all economically viable.
So the worst case scenario is a kind of homogenization of the offer. And what's the happy outcome here? Leave us on a positive note that if galleries and other players in the art world recognize the challenge of this moment, because we're all in it together at the end of the day, what is the positive outcome?
I will give you a simple example. It's about the mid-sized galleries speaking as one voice for the interest of the community. And I give you one example. If the mid-sized gallery system was coming to the auction house and telling them, okay, guys, now our association of 400 of the most influential galleries in the world are telling you, stop selling works at auction that are less than 5 years old, okay? Otherwise, we will not collaborate with you the same way by giving you information about the work, by authentifying the works, and so on, all the services that the galleries are giving to auction house. If you imagine now, András, that we take out that speculation of the works created in the last 5 years, don't you think that the whole ecosystem would live better when the auction house would not lose so much money because it's a very marginal element? But why would they not do it if nobody asking them not to do it with a forceful voice? So that's what I mean by this, is by, in many relationships, giving the mid-sized gallery a voice. I know I'm dreaming, to tell you the truth, András, because I don't believe that there is enough vision in the gallery system to do it, to tell you the truth. So I'm speaking just for pleasure as an idealistic. I don't think they will do it. But if they could do it now, with some people of vision, I think they would rebalance a lot of relationship and kind of kill off some of the dirt that is polluting the way we like it.
Well, I think on that note, we can wrap up. And I'd like to say that what we do know is that there's no way back. The future is ahead of us. And it will require imagination and vision and courage and change. And it requires frank and open discussion, and you've certainly provided very frank and open point of view here for everyone today, provocative even in some ways. So thank you very much, and thank you, Lucia, for offering this platform and for doing this Talking Galleries project, not yet a joint bargaining initiative as Alain would like it to be, but who knows what the future will bring. Thank you very much for hosting us today.
Thank you very much to you, András. It was a pleasure to have you, someone as knowledgeable as you and measured as you as a sparring partner.
Many, many thanks, Alain and András, for this enlightening session. It has been a very inspiring discussion with plenty of ideas to reflect on. Thanks.
Thank you very much.